We were not in a great place as a brand or as a company. I think our stock was somewhere in the low fives, and we really brought you folks on to say, look, we know that we have an opportunity and we know that we have the product to capitalize on that opportunity. But from a brand and awareness perspective, we're virtually unknown, and those that do know us don't trust us given the incidents that had taken place in the past. So what we really came down to the idea is, the first year was, how do we regain credibility? How do we go from being the hot IPO that let everybody down to becoming a company that people trust again and see as taking that next step to not only regaining their footing, but then accelerating their pace of growth? And so we spent that year telling really your story that you developed for us. And that, I think, really made the difference in year one, was having a story arc. And that story arc began in March when we did our first product launch. And that was really saying, okay, Isilon is not only here to stay, but we've made a commitment to being a much broader company for a much wider set of customers, enterprise applicability, a wider set of products, and allowed you folks to take our raw materials and then tell a story that we could come back and build the next chapter and the next chapter. We not only built the story that people were interested in, but we built credibility, because we were able to say, hey, we're going to come back and tell you in 3 months what the next thing we're doing is. And then we did that. So we handled our part as a business, but you folks really gave us the arc in which to plug that raw material in and create, if you will, a mosaic or an overall picture that gave us the credibility again, and then showed how we were scaling our company, scaling our growth, and changing our impression in the industry. And that really made the difference. So once we had our credibility back, so to speak, we still didn't necessarily have that hot factor. We were just back to square one. So how do you go from square one to square three to square five? How do you really accelerate as the business was, match that with brand momentum? And I thought what we did there was essentially say, hey, we've got the IT pubs, we've got the storage stories. How do we start to tell stories again that are much wider? And so really combining social media with the standard news that we had, we started to create a program with influencers that was about much more than our product. We are a product-oriented company and our products are great. But that also led to us being very product-focused in our news. Our products are fast, our products can scale, our products are simple. Well, that's great, but what does that mean at the end of the day? What does that mean to businesses? What does that mean to executives? What does that mean to people who are going to try to change their business with your products? And you folks really helped us how to understand how to tell that story at a much higher level. And so year two, we took our credibility and we took the fact people said, hey, the product's there, and we started to tell those business stories via customers, via speaking engagements, like putting our CEO at a CIO forum and giving him an opportunity to not do a PowerPoint presentation, but tell a speech, and a speech that had impact and that really changed people's minds about who we were as a company and what our products could do. As a matter of fact, that CIO forum that you folks set up for us led to 2 deals. And that wasn't even the point of the conference, but it shows that by up-leveling your story, it can add positivity to every aspect of your business, not just awareness. So 2 years ago, we didn't have any social media. There was an Isilon blog, it had no posts on it, and there really wasn't anything taking place from a strategic perspective. We knew as a company that our audience, IT users, was obviously there, and we could recognize that there would be value in participating. But as far as understanding how to do it, what the best practices would be, do we do Facebook versus Twitter, do we do both, is LinkedIn a valuable asset, all those sorts of questions we didn't have answers to. And so when we worked with you folks, with McBru, what really became clear was that you folks did have a strategy in place. You'd run the play before, you were able to run it again. And so we quickly set up for our particular audience where the best channels would be. You had LinkedIn, you had Twitter, you had SlideShare, and then you had our blog. And so what we really were able to do is take the standard news. You've got customer announcements, you've got product news, you have the things that you're going to do about your financial earnings, the regular corporate news that comes out. Well, those are just point in time. Those have end of life, if you will. And once you put out the release and it's been written about, that's the end of that news cycle. What social media really allowed us to do was extend that news cycle much further than we would have otherwise been able to. And so a release or a customer story gains new life via Twinterview with that customer on Twitter, or via the PDF of the case study on SlideShare tied to a show that will be at that week. For instance, VMworld putting up virtualization case studies and white papers on SlideShare. So by really using social media to create 360 degrees around what was once just point-in-time news, allowed us to both get to new audiences and to get to new channels. And so by doing that, we were able to do things like mine customer references to go from a stale quote in a press release to candid feedback via Twitter to speaking engagements at shows, where they go from being a, hey, sure, I'll help you, to I feel connected, I feel part of the team, and I'm ready to evangelize. And then when you leverage the economies of scale via social media, you don't even have to do the work anymore. And so now it just spins on its own because you set these people up to believe that they're doing the right thing, not only for you, but for themselves. And so with social media, the results that we got were not only the Twitter followers and the downloads of the documents on SlideShare and the basic metrics you might look at, but we got an identity as a company that understood our customers. And then when those customers tapped into that, they were much more likely to be evangelists, and that led to even more content that was then recycled back through the social media channels, and the cycle continued. Once you really start to make a difference, that's when people take notice and take that duty off of your hands, right? So via year 1 and year 2 with McBru, we'd really scaled to a point as a business where our growth was, record setting and made us one of the fastest growing companies in the IT industry. And our brand awareness had gone from being decent and middle of the pack to really starting to be shoulder to shoulder with the big boys. And via these 2 years of programs, other people started to take note, most notably EMC. And when they saw that the product solved a huge product hole for themselves, and when they saw that the brand traction had gone from, we'll wait and see where Isilon is, to Isilon's here to change things, keep an eye on them, they knew that they not only had a momentum play, but they had the brand awareness and the traction that they could take their resources and build upon.